Welcome back, and thank you for letting me keep you company tonight. Settle in, get comfortable, and let your shoulders come down from your ears. Tonight we are going to spend a long, slow while with the quietest of all the great ones, a being with no body and no face, known only as Oedon. There is nothing here you need to hold on to. You can close your eyes whenever you like, and simply let the words carry you. Let's begin. A name in the dark somewhere beneath the old city of Yharnam, past the cobbled streets and the shuttered houses, past the churches and the tombs and the long stone stairs that go down into the dark, there is a name that people once whispered. Oedon. You do not know when you first heard it. Perhaps it was carved above a doorway, worn soft by the passing of hands. Perhaps it was spoken by someone half asleep in the corner of a candlelit room. It is the kind of name that seems to arrive already old, as though it had always been waiting in the quiet for you to notice it. Let's rest here a moment, because there is no hurry. Yharnam is a city of the night. Its lamps burn low and amber against the fog, and the fog moves slowly, the way fog does when the air is cold and still. High above the rooftops the moon hangs, and beneath it the spires reach up like fingers, and everywhere there is the smell of rain on stone. Into this hush the name Oedon fits perfectly, because Oedon, more than anything else in this world, is a thing of hush. It has no roar. It has no thunder. It is not a shape that stands over the city and blots out the stars. It is closer to a sound you almost hear, a pressure at the edge of listening, a word held just under the breath. You will meet many strange beings in the story of Bloodborne. There are the hunters with their long coats and their silver weapons. There are the scholars who dug too deep and found more than they were looking for. There are the beasts, and there are the great cosmic entities the people of this world learned to call the Great Ones. Oedon belongs to that last group, the Great Ones, and yet Oedon stands a little apart from all of them, because Oedon is the one who was never seen. The others have forms, however monstrous or beautiful. Oedon has none. Where the others fill the sky, Oedon fills the silence. This is the gentle riddle we will turn over together tonight. What is a being that has no body? How can something exist and still have no shape at all, and why, of all the powers in this tragic and haunted world, does this formless one leave such deep marks on the city and its people, on their prayers, on their blood, and on a chapel that still bears its name? We will not rush toward the answers. We will walk toward them slowly, the way you walk when you are tired and the road is long and there is no reason left to hurry. For now it is enough to know that the name exists. Oedon. It waits in the stone of the old city, patient as the fog. And you are safe here, wrapped warm, listening from a great distance, watching a city that cannot reach you and cannot harm you. Let the name settle over you like a thin blanket of mist, soft and cool and harmless. There is nothing to fear in a name. Let it go, and rest. The Great Ones and the shape of the sky to understand Oedon. We have to first understand the family it belongs to, the strange kindred the people of Yharnam came to call the Great Ones. Do not worry about remembering any of this. Let it wash over you. You are only walking through a museum after closing time, and I am pointing at things in the dim light as we pass. The Great Ones are not gods in the way you might first imagine gods. They do not sit on thrones demanding worship, at least not in the simple way. They are older and stranger than that. In the lore of this world, they are described as beings that exist beyond the ordinary rules of space and time, cosmic entities who see and move in ways that a human mind was never built to follow. When people in the story try to describe them, the words come out cracked and unfinished, because language was made for small things, for bread and lamps and doorways, and the Great Ones are not small. And yet here is the tender heart of it, the thing that makes their story so quietly sad rather than merely frightening. The lore tells us that the Great Ones, for all their vast power, are sympathetic in spirit. That single phrase changes everything. It means they're not cold. It means they're not cruel for the sake of cruelty. It means that behind the horror there is something almost like feeling, something almost like longing. In the writings gathered by those who studied them, a single idea returns again and again, that every great one loses its child, and then yearns for a surrogate. Read gently, that is not a monster's creed. That is a grief. It is the oldest grief there is, the ache of a parent for a child that could not stay. Hold that thought loosely, because it will matter later when we come to Oedon's own story. For now, simply let it be true that these enormous beings carry a wound. They reach toward humanity not only to test or to harm, but because they are looking for something they have lost, and cannot find, and cannot stop searching for. When you understand that, the fog over Yharnam looks a little different. It is not only menace, it is also mourning. The people of this world did not always know about the Great Ones. For most of Yharnam's history, the sky was only the sky, and the moon was only the moon, and the dead stayed buried in their tombs and asked for nothing. The knowledge came later, and it came from below, from scholars who went digging into the old places beneath the city and found chambers that no living hand had opened in a very long time. We will come to that discovery in its own time, softly, because it is where so much of the sorrow begins. For tonight it is enough to say that once. People looked up and saw a companion moon they had never noticed, and they began to understand that they were not alone, and never had been. Among all the great ones whose names survive, most left something behind you could point to. A form seen in a nightmare. A shape glimpsed in the deep water beneath a cathedral. A cry heard through a wall. Oedon left something quieter and stranger. Oedon left a name, a chapel, a handful of runes, and a feeling. The feeling that something was present, even when nothing could be seen. Of all the lost and searching great ones, Oedon is the one who searched from within the silence itself. And that is where we are going, slowly, together. But there is no need to arrive yet. Let the sky hold its strange second moon, far away and harmless, and let yourself grow heavier and warmer where you lie. Rest now. The museum is quiet, and the door is locked behind us, and nothing here can follow you home. What it means to be formless, let's sit for a while with the strangest fact about Oedon, the one that gives it its title. Oedon is called the Formless Great One. Formless. Take that word slowly, the way you would take a warm drink on a cold night, a little at a time. To be formless is to have no body, no edges, no here and no there. It is to exist without a place where you begin, and a place where you end. This is a hard thing for a mind like ours to hold, and there is no need to force it. Everything you have ever known has had a shape. Your hands have edges. The room you are in has walls. Even the fog, which seems shapeless, has a top and a bottom, and drifts from one place to another. But Oedon, in the lore, has none of that. It is not hiding somewhere waiting to be found. There is no cavern where Oedon sits, no altar where Oedon's true body waits behind a curtain. When the story calls Oedon formless, it means it plainly. There is no form to find. So how do you know such a being is there at all? This is where the lore gives us its one soft clue, and we will return to it more than once tonight, because it is the key to everything. Oedon, we are told, exists as voice, not as a mouth, not as a throat, not as a creature that speaks, but as the voice itself, the sound alone, the vibration in the air with nothing behind it making the sound. Imagine hearing a single low note humming in an empty room, and searching every corner, and finding no instrument, no singer, no source at all, only the note, going on and on. That is as close as we can come to picturing something that cannot be pictured. Rest here, because there is something almost peaceful in it, once the strangeness settles. A being with no body cannot loom over you. It cannot chase you down a corridor. It cannot reach out a hand, because it has no hand. The formless one is not the kind of horror that pounces. If it frightens the people of Yharnam, it frightens them the way a thought frightens you in the dark, quietly, from the inside. And you are not in Yharnam. You are far away, warm and still, and the formless one cannot cross the distance between the story and your pillow. It is only a note humming in a room you will never have to enter. There is a reason this idea, a great one made of pure voice, sits so deeply in the imagination of everyone who has wandered through this world. It touches something we already half know. We know that the most powerful things in a life are often the ones without a shape. Grief has no body, and yet it fills a house. Love has no edges, and yet it holds a family together. A memory weighs nothing and can be carried anywhere, and still it can bring you to tears years after the thing itself is gone. The people who first told this story understood that a formless thing can be the strongest thing of all. Eden is horror built out of that understanding, the horror and also the strange comfort of a presence you cannot see but cannot doubt. Some who study this world like to point out that a formless being is, in a way, the purest kind of Great One. The others are still tangled up in bodies, in tentacles and eyes and vast round shapes. Eden has shed all of that, or perhaps never wore it, and become only what it is underneath. Only will, only voice, only the wanting. That is offered gently, as an interpretation, one of the quiet theories that people trade in the low light. Nothing in the game states it outright, but it is a lovely and a mournful idea that to become the highest kind of being is to lose your shape entirely, and to be left as a single note in an empty room, singing to no one, hoping someone will hear. Try, just gently, and only for a moment, to do the impossible thing. Try to point at Eden. Where would your hand go? Not up at the moon, for that is another presence entirely. Not down beneath the city, for there is no cavern where it waits. Not out at the fog, though the fog and the formless one do share a certain softness. There is simply nowhere for your finger to land, no direction that is more Eden than any other, because it is not in a place at all. And here is the quiet turn, the thing worth resting on. When you cannot point at a thing, you also cannot be cornered by it. You cannot be backed against a wall by it. You cannot be shut in a room with it, because it is not in the room, and it is not in any room, and it is not anywhere your body could ever be. The formless one is the single presence in all this world that can never be in the same place as you, for the simple reason that it is in no place at all. There is a deep safety hidden inside that strangeness once you find it. A thing with no location cannot arrive. It cannot cross a threshold or climb a stair or stand at the foot of a bed. It can only ever be spoken of, softly, from far away, the way we are speaking of it now, a subject for the quiet hours and nothing more. So even as we call Eden the strangest of all the great ones, we can also call it, in a way, the safest to think about in the dark, because thinking about it is the only place it can ever be met, and thought cannot hurt you. Let that be a small comfort folded inside the mystery. The one you cannot picture is also the one that can never reach you. Let that image hold you for a moment, and then let even that go. You do not need to solve the riddle of the formless one tonight. You only need to let it be there, humming softly at the far edge of hearing, while you sink a little deeper into rest. There is no shape here in the dark with you. There is only the quiet, and the quiet is kind. Rest now. The voice with no throat. We have said that Oedon exists as voice. Let's stay with that idea a while longer, gently, turning it over the way you might turn a smooth stone in your palm until it grows warm. Because in this world, voice is not a small thing. Voice is one of the deepest currents running under the whole story, and Oedon sits at the very bottom of that current, in the still water where it all begins. Think first about what a voice usually is. A voice is the part of us that reaches out. It leaves the body and travels across the space between people, and arrives somewhere else, in another person's ear, in another person's mind. Even when the body stays still, the voice goes out and touches the world. So there is something fitting, something almost inevitable about a being who is only voice and nothing else. Oedon is reach without a reacher. It is the going out with no one left behind to do the going. It is the touch of a presence that has no hand to touch with. The people of Yharnam lived surrounded by voices they could not always place. Bells rang in the fog. Prayers were murmured behind heavy doors. Somewhere, always, there was a sound with no clear source. And in a city that had begun to commune with things from beyond the sky, that was enough to make anyone uneasy. Into that world, the idea of a formless voice was not strange at all. It was almost the natural conclusion of everything they had already begun to believe, that there were presences all around them, unseen, listening, and sometimes answering. Let's be careful here, and honest, because that is part of the calm this story offers. Much of what people say about Oedon and voice is gentle guesswork, the kind of quiet theorising that gathers around a mystery. What the lore states plainly is only this, that Oedon is formless and exists as voice. That much is written into the world itself, into the descriptions of the things Oedon left behind. The rest, the larger web of meaning that thinkers have spun around it, is theory, offered softly, debated in low tones by people who love this world. We will honour both. We will hold the plain fact in one hand and the tender theories in the other, and we will not mistake the second for the first. Still, even keeping that honest line, it is worth sitting with how much of Bloodborne turns on voices. There is a cry that echoes through a nightmare, a child's cry, that we will come to later, softly, when the time is right. There are the calls that hunters use to reach across into other worlds. There is the whole notion, running through the deep places, that the right sound at the right moment can open a door between what is here and what is beyond. In a world stitched together out of voices, Oedon is the first voice, or perhaps the last one, the one underneath all the others. The hum you would hear if every other sound in the world fell silent at once. There is comfort in this too, if you look for it. A voice, unlike a beast, does not want to devour you. A voice wants to be heard. Whatever else Oedon is, the shape of its longing is the shape of every voice that has ever gone out into the dark, hoping someone was listening. And you are listening now, aren't you? From your warm and distant place, half awake, letting a story wash over you. There is nothing frightening in being the one who listens. It is one of the kindest things a person can be. Let the idea of the voice with no throat drift past you, harmless, and let your own thoughts grow quieter, softer, slower. Rest now. The city that rose on blood now, we come down out of the strange sky and set our feet gently on the stones of the city itself. Because Oedon's story cannot be told without Yharnam, and Yharnam cannot be understood without one thing at its heart, a substance the people there called the Old Blood. Let's walk into that history slowly. None of it can touch you. It is all long finished, and you are only being shown the ruins from a safe and pleasant distance. Long before the night we usually see, Yharnam was a city like other cities, older than most, built on ground that hid deep secrets. Beneath its streets lay ancient tombs and labyrinths, carved by a civilization that had lived and worshipped there ages before, and had done something no one else had dared. They had reached toward the Great Ones. They had left behind chambers full of the residue of that reaching. And in time, curious minds came digging. The scholars came from a place of learning, a college on the edge of a still lake, and they went down into the dark looking for knowledge. What they found was blood, though not ordinary blood. It was a strange and potent substance, and it could do remarkable things. It could heal wounds that should not have healed. It could cure sickness. It could make the weak strong and the dying well. To people who had watched loved ones suffer and fade, it must have seemed like mercy itself, poured out from beneath the earth. You can hardly blame them for what they did next, which was to bring it up into the light and share it. Out of that discovery grew the Healing Church, a great institution that spread the use of the blood through the city. Blood was given as medicine and taken almost as sacrament. It was administered in quiet rooms by gentle hands, and for a while it must have felt like a golden age, a city healed of its aches, its people made whole. Let's pause there in that hopeful moment before the shadow falls, because it is worth remembering that so much sorrow in this story began with a wish to help. That is often how the deepest tragedies begin, not with cruelty, but with care that reached too far. The shadow, when it came slowly. The blood that healed also changed. Over long years, in ways that people could not at first admit to themselves, the very medicine that had saved them began to turn some of them into something else. This is the scourge that hangs over Yharnam, the slow curse in the blood, and we will not dwell on its horrors tonight. It is enough to say, softly, that a gift became a burden, and a cure carried a hidden cost, and the city that had risen so hopefully on the old blood found itself bound to it in ways it could not undo. That grief is old now. The people who lived it are long past. You are only looking back at it through clear glass, from a room where nothing is bleeding, and nothing is changing, and everything is still. Why does all of this matter for Oedon, the formless one who never seemed to set foot in the city at all? It matters because of a question that many who study this world cannot stop asking, a question about where the old blood truly came from, and whose voice, if any, might be humming somewhere far down inside it. We will turn to that question next, carefully, as a question and not a verdict. For now, let the city rest in your mind as it was in its better days, lamplit and hopeful, the fog soft, the bells not yet frightening. Let that gentle version of Yharnam be the one you hold as you sink deeper. The rest is only history, and history cannot wake you. Rest now. The old blood and the question of Oedon here, we arrive at one of the great quiet mysteries of this world. And I want to walk into it with real care, because it is exactly the kind of place where it is easy to say too much and pretend a guess is a fact. Let's not do that. Let's stay honest and gentle, and the honesty will only make the calm run deeper. The plain question is this: what is the old blood, and where did it truly come from? The game does not fully answer. It tells us the blood was found in the deep places beneath the city, in the tombs of that older civilization who had communed with the Great Ones. It tells us the blood carries something more than ordinary blood carries, some echo of the cosmic, some thread that connects the one who drinks it to the powers beyond the sky. But it stops short of laying the whole thing bare, and that unfinished quality is part of why people have wondered about it for so long. Now here is where Oedon enters, softly through a side door. Many who love and study this world have gathered a set of clues and drawn a gentle line between the formless one and the blood itself. The reasoning goes something like this. Oedon has no body, only voice, only presence. It cannot walk into the city, it cannot be met on a road or fought in a hall. So if a formless being wished to touch the lives of thousands, to reach into the very veins of a whole people, what better path than through the blood, which passes from hand to hand and body to body, carried into every home and every sick room. It is an elegant, haunting idea that the miracle in the city's veins might carry, somewhere within it, the hum of the one who has no shape. But listen closely, because this is important, and it is where I keep my promise to you. This is a theory. It is a beloved and widely shared theory, argued gently among the people who care most about this world, but the game does not state it outright. It never says, in plain words, that the old blood is Oedon, or that Oedon rides in the blood, or that every blood ministration was secretly the reaching of the formless one. Those are threads that thoughtful people have woven together from scattered hints, and they may well be right, and the weaving is beautiful. But an honest telling keeps the seam visible. What is certain is the blood, its power, and its price. What is uncertain and offered as gentle possibility is the presence of Oedon within it, I dwell on this not to spoil the mystery, but to protect the calm. There is a particular peace in a story told honestly, where you are never being tricked, never being sold a certainty that is really a guess. You can rest more deeply when you trust the voice speaking to you. So let this be the shape of it, held loosely. In the deep tombs, an ancient people reached for the great ones, and left behind a blood that could heal and could change. From that blood a city rose and a church grew and a slow sorrow followed. And humming somewhere behind it all, perhaps, only perhaps, is the formless one, the voice with no throat, reaching the only way a shapeless thing can reach. Through the warm red thread that runs through everyone. You do not have to decide whether it is true. That is the gift of a mystery. You are allowed to simply let it stay a mystery, to lay it down beside you like a book you have stopped reading, still open, no longer needing your attention. The blood is far away, the city is long asleep, and you are drifting, warm and safe, past all of it, towards somewhere much quieter. Rest now. Oedon Chapel now, let's find at last a place we can actually stand in. A room with walls and a floor and a little warmth. A place that carries the formless one's name. In the middle of the long and frightening night that falls over Yharnam, there is a chapel, and it is called Oedon Chapel. Of everything the formless one touched, this is the piece you can walk into and rest your weight on. So let's go there together and stay a while, because it is, of all places in this world, one of the gentlest. Picture it. A high stone room, old and worn, its arches climbing up into shadow. Candles have been set out, small and steady, their light pooling gold on the flagstones. Outside, the hunt rages through the streets. The fog rolls thick. The night seems as though it will never end. But inside these walls there is a hush, and there is light, and there is a strange and stubborn safety. This is a refuge. When the whole city has turned against itself, the chapel remains a place where a frightened soul can catch their breath. That such a shelter should carry Oedon's name is one of the quiet wonders of this story. Why is it named for the formless one? The honest answer is that the game leaves it to us to feel rather than to know for certain. The name is simply there, ancient and unexplained, the way so many of the oldest names in Yharnam are. Some who study the world take the name as one more sign that Oedon's presence lies deep beneath the whole city, older than the church, older than the hunt, woven into the ground itself, so that even a house of shelter would end up bearing its name. Others simply take it as it comes, a holy place among many, dedicated long ago to a power now half forgotten. Either way, and offered gently as these things must be, the feeling is the same. In the worst of the night, people gathered under the name of the one without a shape, and there they were safe. There is something quietly moving in that, if you let yourself feel it. The formless one is so often spoken of in the language of horror, as a thing in the blood, a hidden hand behind the city's sorrows. And yet here is a room that carries its name, and the room is kind. The room keeps people warm. Whatever the truth of Oedon, this much is real inside the story. When the survivors of the long night looked for a place to be safe, they found it beneath that name. Fear and shelter sitting side by side under the same word. Let's rest here longer than we might elsewhere, because you deserve a warm room in the middle of a dark story. Feel the steadiness of the candlelight. It does not flicker wildly. It burns low and even, the way a good candle does when the air is still. The stone under your feet is cool, but solid. The arches overhead are old, and have held up this long, and will hold up longer. Outside, far outside, the city does whatever the city does, and none of it comes in. The heavy door stays shut. The night stays out. And you are here, in the quiet gold of the chapel, breathing slow. Let's linger over the small things of the room, because small things are what the tired mind likes to hold. Notice the way the candlelight does not quite reach the highest arches, so that the ceiling stays a soft and friendly darkness overhead, close and sheltering rather than vast. Notice the warm places on the stone floor, smoothed by generations of feet. Each hollow a record of ordinary people who once walked here on ordinary errands, long before the night turned strange. Notice the faint smell of wax, and old stone and cold air, the particular smell of a quiet church at night, which is a smell that has calmed frightened people for as long as there have been churches to be frightened in. There is nothing here that moves suddenly. There is nothing here that asks anything of you. There is only the slow, steady burning of the candles and the deep patience of the walls. And notice, most of all, the quality of the silence. It is not an empty silence, the kind that makes the ears strain for something to fill it. It is a full silence, a held silence, the silence of a place that has decided to be safe and is keeping that decision through the night. You can feel the difference, even now, even from your own quiet place. There are silences that make you tense, and there are silences that let you finally let go. And the silence of the chapel is the second kind. It is the silence of shelter. It settles over everyone inside it like a soft grey blanket, and under it, the frightened grow calm, and the weary grow heavy, and the long night loses, at last, its power to alarm. We will meet the people who gathered in this chapel very soon, gently, one at a time, because their small stories are some of the most tender in all of Eden's lore. But before we do, simply let the chapel hold you. It has held frightened people before, and done it well. Let it hold you now, warm and unhurried, while the candles burn low, and the night stays where it belongs, outside and far away. Rest now. The dweller and the gathering of the lost in the chapel. When you first arrive, you are not alone. There is a figure there already, waiting, and he is one of the quietest and kindest presences in the whole of this dark world. People call him the Oedon Chapel dweller. He is bent and strange to look at, wrapped and hunched, and yet everything he says is soft and decent and full of care. He is not a threat. He is a keeper of the small flame of shelter, and he asks only that the peace of this place be preserved. The dweller does something simple and beautiful. He gathers the lost. Through the long night, as you move through the broken city, you find survivors, ordinary people huddled in their homes, terrified, certain that death waits for them outside every door. And you can tell them, gently, that there is a safe place. You can send them here, to the chapel, to the light and the quiet, to the dweller who will take them in. One by one they come. They arrive frightened and they settle, and slowly the chapel fills with the murmur of people who have found, against all odds, a corner of the night where nothing hunts them. This is one of the tenderest threads in Eden's story, and it asks almost nothing of you but to notice it. In a city drowning in fear, under the name of the Formless One, a small gathering of the saved takes shape. The dweller tends them. The candles burn. For a while, it works. For a while, the chapel is exactly what a refuge should be, a place where the lost are found, and the frightened are calmed, and the endless night is kept, however thinly, at bay. I will be honest with you, softly, because you trust me to be, and because the honesty will not disturb your rest, but deepen it. Not every story that begins in the chapel ends in peace. This is Yharnam, and the night is long and cruel in its patience, and some of the people who gather here carry sorrows and secrets of their own that the night can find a way to reach. There are choices to be made about whom to send where, and not all of them lead to safe mourning. We will not walk down the darkest of those paths tonight. It is enough, and it is true, to say that the chapel is a place of genuine shelter, that many who reach it are truly comforted, and that the dweller's gentle care is real and freely given. The griefs that touch this place are old and finished. You are only hearing about them from far away, and none of them can find their way to you. Let's stay with the warmth rather than the sorrow, because the warmth is the truer heart of this room. Picture the chapel a little fuller now. A handful of people, scattered across the wide stone floor, sitting in the candlelight, each one a soul who was alone and afraid in the dark, and is now not alone anymore. They do not say much. They do not need to. There is a particular quiet that settles over a place when frightened people finally feel safe, a loosening, a letting down of held breath. That quiet is in the chapel now. Let it be in you too. This is what the name of Eden shelters, at least here, at least tonight, in the version of the story we are choosing to hold. Not horror. A gathering of the lost, brought in from the cold, tended by kind hands, resting in the low gold light. There are worse things to have your name written over than a room like that. Let the murmur of the gathered fade to nothing. Let the candles burn down soft. You are among the safe now. One more soul settling into the warm and quiet dark. Rest now. Arianna, the woman of pleasure among all the people whose lives brush against the formless one. There is one whose story sits at the very centre of Eden's lore, and I want to tell it gently, because it is a sad story told softly. And there is a strange tenderness in it under the sorrow. Her name is Arianna. In Yharnam she was known as a woman of pleasure, which is only to say that she made her living in the oldest and least kind of ways a city can offer a woman, and that the world had not been gentle with her. When you first meet Arianna, she is standing in a doorway in a troubled part of the city, and she is not cruel, and she is not a monster. She is tired, and she is warm, and she has a certain worn grace about her. When the night grows dangerous, you can do her a small kindness. You can tell her about the chapel, about the safe place under Eden's name, and you can send her there to shelter with the others. She goes gladly. She wants, as everyone in this story wants, only to be safe, only to make it through to some quieter morning. For a while, that is exactly what she finds. She arrives at the chapel and she settles into it, and if you speak with her there, she is grateful and kind, glad of the light and the quiet, glad of the shelter. There is nothing ominous in these moments, only a weary woman resting in a safe room. It is one of the small mercies of the long night, and you were the one who arranged it, and that is a good thing you did. Let that goodness stand for a moment, plain and uncomplicated, before the story turns. Here I have to be careful, and slow, because what happens to Arianna is where her story joins Oedon's most directly, and it carries a shadow. There is a particular part of Bloodborne's lore that has to do with the special quality of Arianna's blood. In this world, as we have said, blood is never only blood. Some bloodlines are held to be rarer than others, more potent, more closely tied to the cosmic powers beneath the city. Arianna's blood, the lore quietly tells us, is one of these rare kinds, and that rareness, though she never asked for it and never knew what it would mean, is what draws the attention of the formless one toward her. We will follow where that leads in the next chapter, softly, because it is one of the strangest and most sorrowful events in all of Eden's story, and it deserves to be told carefully rather than quickly. For now, let's simply hold Arianna as she is in her better moments, before the turn. A woman who was dealt a hard hand by a hard city, who found in the chapel a rare taste of safety, who was kind when kindness was scarce, and who deserved, as everyone does, far more gentleness than the world gave her. Whatever comes next in her story, that decency was real, and it was hers. There is a particular sadness in the stories of people who are used by powers far larger than themselves, who become important to a cosmic tragedy, not through any choice of their own, but simply because of what runs in their veins. Arianna is one of those people. And yet, held gently, her story is also about a moment of shelter, a moment of rest, a moment when a tired soul was safe and warm in a candlelit room. Let that be the image you keep of her tonight. The sorrow can wait until the next chapter, and even then we will hold it lightly. For now, let Arianna rest in her chapel, and let yourself rest wherever you are, warm and unhurried and far from all of it. Rest now. The child born under the blood moon, we come now to the quiet centre of the whole story, the moment where the Formless One reaches into a single human life and leaves its deepest mark. I will tell it slowly and softly, because it is strange and sorrowful, and because there is, underneath the strangeness, something that touches the oldest tenderness we know, the love of a parent for a child. Keep breathing slow, nothing here can reach you. As the long night of Yharnam deepens, a change comes over the sky. The moon, which had hung pale and high, begins to descend, and its light shifts, growing deep and red, until it fills the whole night with a heavy crimson glow. This is the blood moon, and its coming marks a thinning of the walls between our world and the world beyond. Things that were hidden come closer. Presences that were faint grow strong. Under the blood moon, the reach of the Great Ones stretches further into the lives of ordinary people than it ever could before. It is under this moon that Arianna's story turns. If she has been sheltering in the chapel, safe under Oedon's name, the descent of the blood moon changes what that shelter means. The special quality of her blood, that rare and cosmic thread she carried without ever choosing it, becomes a doorway. And through it, gently and terribly, the Formless One reaches. When you return to her afterward, you find that Arianna has become a mother. She has borne a child. But the child is not a human child. Let's slow right down here, because this is the tender, uncanny heart of it. What Arianna brings into the world is a small, pale creature, strange and soft, unmistakably not of this world, a little cosmic thing that some describe as resembling a tiny star fallen into flesh. It is fragile beyond measure. It cannot survive apart from its mother. It is, in the plainest law terms, a child touched by the Great Ones, a celestial infant, and the widely held understanding among those who study this world is that it is a child of Eden, the Formless One made, for the first time, almost into a parent. The blood was the path, Arianna was the mother. And the shapeless voice, for one strange moment, had something like a child in the world. I want to be honest with you about the sorrow in this, but I want to be gentle too, and there is a way to hold it gently. This is not a happy birth. The creature is frail, and the circumstances are strange, and Arianna herself did not understand or ask for what was happening to her. There is real tragedy in it. The tragedy of a woman used by a power beyond her knowing, and the tragedy of a child too fragile for the world it was born into. We do not have to look at the harshest edges of it tonight. It is enough to understand the shape of what happened. The Formless One, the Great One who had no body and only voice, reached across into the warm human world through the blood of a sleeping woman, and for a moment, against all its nature, it had a child. And here, remember the phrase we held earlier, the one at the heart of all the Great Ones. Every Great One loses its child, and then yearns for a surrogate. Read against that, Arianna's story stops being only horror and becomes something sadder and more understandable. The Formless One is not reaching for her out of malice. It is reaching the way all the Great Ones reach, out of a vast and ancient loneliness, out of the wish, older than words, to have a child again, to fill the emptiness where a child should be. It goes about that wish in a way that brings sorrow, because it does not understand our world, because a being of pure voice does not know how to be a gentle parent. But the wish underneath is not monstrous. The wish underneath is the most human wish there is. There is one more gentle thing worth sitting with here, because it turns the strangeness towards something almost sweet. The small pale creature, for all that it is not of our world, is cared for. It is not cast out or feared by the one who bore it. In the quiet of the chapel, mother and child remain together, bound so closely that the one cannot be parted from the other and live. Read coldly, that is a fragility, a sorrow. But read gently, in the low candlelight it is also a kind of tenderness, the oldest tenderness there is. A mother and her child unwilling to be separated, needing to stay close, keeping each other warm in the dark. Whatever cosmic strangeness set it in motion, what it comes to rest as, in that room, is simply a parent and a child, together in the night. And perhaps that is the softest way to understand what the Formless One was reaching for all along. Not power, not conquest, just this, the small warm fact of a child that stays close, a bond that does not break, a presence to hold and be held by. It reached clumsily, and through means that brought sorrow, because a being of pure voice does not know the gentle human ways of these things. But the thing it reached toward was this ordinary tenderness, the same tenderness any of us would recognise, a child near its mother in a safe and candlelit room. Seen that way, the strange birth under the red moon is not only eerie, it is also, somewhere underneath, unbearably familiar, the cosmic dressed in the plainest and most human of longings. Let that soften the whole scene for you, the way a blanket softens the hard edge of a bench. A lonely, shapeless thing wanted a child, and reached the only way it could, and got, for one fragile moment, a small pale creature in a candlelit room. It did not go well, because so little in Yharnam goes well. But the longing was real, and the longing was almost tender, and that tenderness is the thread we will hold instead of the horror. The blood moon has set now, long ago, in a story that is already finished. The strange child, the tired mother, the reaching voice, all of it is far behind us. At rest. Let it rest, and you, warm and safe and far away, rest too. Rest now. Oedon Writhe and the language of runes turn to something small and quiet now, a set of marks and words that the people of Yharnam left behind, because among them are the few places where Oedon's name is written plainly into the workings of the world. These are the runes, and one of them carries the Formless One's name directly. Do not worry about the details. Let them pass over you like the small print in an old book you are too sleepy to read closely. The feeling of them is what matters. In this world, there are things called carol runes, named for a scholar who learned to hear the voices of the Great Ones and to write down what she heard, not in ordinary letters, but in strange sigils that captured something of those cosmic sounds. That idea alone is worth resting on. A person listened so closely to the beings beyond the sky that she began to catch their words, and she found a way to set those words down as marks that could be worn and carried. The runes are, in a sense, frozen pieces of the voices of the Great Ones, and so it is fitting that Oedon, the one who is only voice, should have a rune among them. That rune is called Oedon Writhe. In the plainest terms, it is one of the marks a hunter can carry, and its effect has to do with the flow and restoration of the small silver ammunition the hunters use, drawn up out of their own blood. You do not need to hold on to the mechanics. What matters, gently, is the name and the idea behind it. Oedon Writhe. The writhing of the Formless One, a rune that ties Oedon to blood, and to the way blood can be spent and restored, turned into something that acts in the world. Even here, in this small carried mark, the Formless One is bound up with blood, with flow, with the strange traffic between the body and the cosmic. Some who study these runes like to read a deeper meaning into Oedon Writhe, and I will offer it to you softly, as theory, the way it is meant to be taken. They notice that the rune connects the Formless One to the restoration and movement of a resource drawn from within the body, and they see in that another echo of the same idea we have circled before, that Oedon works through blood, through the inner flow of living things, rather than through any outward shape. The rune, on this reading, is one more quiet piece of evidence for a Great One whose whole way of touching the world runs through the veins. Held loosely, it is a lovely thread. Held honestly, it remains an interpretation, one gentle reading among others, and the game leaves the last word unspoken, as it so often does. There are other runes too, other frozen voices, each tied to different Great Ones and different ideas, and together they form a kind of language, a way that the people of Yharnam learn to carry small pieces of the cosmic with them and put them to use. It is a strange and beautiful notion when you sit with it in the quiet, that the vast and unknowable beings beyond the sky could be heard so closely that their voices could be written down, worn like charms, folded into the everyday work of survival. Even the terror of the Great Ones was, in the end, partly domesticated into these little marks, these runes, carried in a pocket against the dark. Let the runes blur now, the way small print blurs when your eyes grow heavy. You do not have to remember a single one. It is enough to know that somewhere in the language of this world, written in a sigil learned from listening, Oedon's name is set down, tied as always to blood and to flow, and to the quiet reaching of a voice with no throat. The scholar who first heard those voices is long gone. The runes she wrote have gone still. And you are drifting past all of it now, past the small marks and the frozen sounds, into a quiet that needs no words at all. Rest now. The being that longs for a shape lets gather up what we have gently gathered so far and hold it all together for a moment. Because when you set the pieces side by side, a single sad and beautiful picture begins to form, and it is worth seeing whole before we go on. There is no strain in this. We are only stepping back to look at a painting we have been standing too close to. Here is the being we have been circling all night. Oedon, the formless Great One. It has no body, no face, no place where it begins or ends. It exists as voice, as sound with nothing behind it, a note humming in an empty room. It cannot walk into the city. It cannot be met on a road. And yet it reaches, again and again, into the warm human world, through the blood, through the veins of the people, through a rare bloodline in a tired woman, through a rune written by a listening scholar, through a chapel that carries its name. Everywhere it reaches the only way a shapeless thing can, indirectly, through the inner life of others. And why does it reach at all? Here we return, one last time, to the phrase that unlocks the whole tragedy. Every great one loses its child, and then yearns for a surrogate. The formless one, whatever else it is a being that longs. It longs for a child. It longs for a shape. It longs, perhaps, for the one thing it does not have and cannot make on its own. A form in the world. A presence that can be held. A child that can stay. A being of pure voice, singing into the dark, hoping to become, somehow, something more than a voice. That is Oedon, held in the gentlest light. Not a devil in the blood. A grief with no body, searching for a way to become whole. This is why the story of Arianna and the fragile child matters so much, and why we lingered there so long. It is the one moment where the longing almost succeeds. For a breath, the formless one had a child in the world, a small pale creature born under the red moon. It did not last, because so little in this world lasts, because a voice does not know how to keep a fragile thing alive. But in that moment you can see, clearly, what the whole vast reaching was for. Not conquest, not cruelty. A child. The oldest wish there is, wearing the strangest possible shape. There is a way of seeing all of Bloodborne through this single lens, offered gently as one reading among many. On this view, the whole tragedy of Yharnam, the blood, the church, the hunt, the long red night, is the wreckage left behind by lonely cosmic beings reaching clumsily for children they could never keep. The Great Ones are not villains in this telling, they are mourners, and Oedon, the formless one, is the purest mourner of them all, because it has shed even the body that might have let it hold a child, and is left with nothing but the wanting, and the voice that carries the wanting out into the night. It is horror, yes, but it is horror made almost entirely out of love that has nowhere to go. I find there is a strange comfort in seeing it this way, and I hope you feel it too, here in the warm dark. The thing in the story that seemed most frightening, the shapeless presence humming under the city, turns out, when you look closely and kindly, to be lonely. And loneliness, however vast, is not a thing that hunts you. It is a thing that reaches out, hoping to be met. You do not have to meet it. You only have to understand it, gently from far away, and let the understanding soften the fear into something more like sadness, and let the sadness soften, in turn, into rest. So let the whole picture settle now, complete and quiet. A formless voice, longing for a child, reaching through the blood of a sleeping city, and finding, for one fragile moment under a red moon, something almost like what it sought. That is the heart of Oedon's story, and you have held it now, whole and gentle, and you can lay it down. It asks nothing more of you. Let it rest where you found it, in the far quiet, and let yourself sink deeper, warm and safe and unburdened, towards sleep. Rest now. Queen Yharnam and the threads between there is another figure who drifts at the edge of Oedon's story, silent and sorrowful. And though the game never lets us see her clearly, the people who study this world have gently tied her fate to the Formless Ones. Her name, or her title, is Queen Yharnam, and the city itself is said to carry her name. Let's walk toward her slowly, through the mist, and remember as we go that much of what surrounds her is quiet theory rather than plain fact, offered softly, held loosely. Queen Yharnam belongs to an older world, far beneath the city. In the deep places carved by that ancient civilization who first reached for the Great Ones. She is a queen of that vanished people, a royal figure of the underworld beneath Yharnam, and when she appears in the story at all, she appears as a kneeling, weeping woman in a pale bridal gown, her face hidden, her whole shaped one long shape of grief. She does not fight you in the ordinary way. She kneels, and she mourns, and around her the air itself seems heavy with a sorrow older than the city above. What is she mourning? Here the threads gather, and here I must be especially careful to keep the seam visible. The widely held understanding among those who love this world is that Queen Yharnam, long ago, became the mother of a child of the Formless One. On this reading, she is bound to Oedon much as Arianna would later be bound, a woman of a rare and cosmic bloodline, chosen as the vessel through which the shapeless voice sought to make a child. The child born of that union, many believe, is the infant we will meet in the next chapter, the one who cries eternally in a nightmare. That is the theory, and it is a beautiful and a mournful one, and it may well be true. But the game does not say it in plain words. It gives us a weeping queen, a grieving mother, and a scatter of hints, and it lets us and the scholars do the gentle work of tying the threads together. Whether or not every thread holds, the feeling of Queen Yharnam is unmistakable, and it is the same feeling that runs under Oedon's whole story. It is the feeling of a mother's grief. If Arianna's chapter showed us the Formless One reaching for a child in the present, then Queen Yharnam shows us, dimly, an older attempt at the same thing, the same reaching, the same sorrow, echoing up from a deeper and more ancient layer of the world. The two women rhyme across time, both carried a rare bloodline, both became, in some sense, mothers to the Formless One's longing, both were left with grief. The story of Oedon, seen through them, becomes a story that repeats, a wound reopened again and again across the centuries, a voice reaching for a child and leaving weeping mothers in its wake. There is deep sorrow in this, and I will not pretend otherwise, but I want to hold it the way you hold something fragile and old, with care rather than fear. These are ancient griefs. Queen Yharnam knelt and wept long before the night we usually see, in a world already buried, already finished. Her sorrow is real, but it is also very far away, sealed in the deep places, unable to climb the long stairs into your quiet room. You are only glimpsing her through the mist, from a great and gentle distance, a pale kneeling figure in a story that ended ages ago. And there is, even here, a thin thread of tenderness to hold instead of the horror. A grieving mother is not a monster. A weeping queen is not a thing to fear. She is a figure of love that lost its object, of care that had nowhere to go, and in that she is not so different from the Formless One she is bound to, or from any soul that has loved and lost. Let her kneel there in the mist, mourning her ancient child, and let your heart go soft toward her rather than afraid. Then let even that gentle sadness loosen and drift, the way mist drifts and thins and finally clears. She is at rest now, in her deep and distant place. Let yourself be at rest too, warm and safe and far above all that old sorrow. Rest now. The nightmare and the cry of an infant now, we come to a sound, a single sound that echoes through one of the darkest corners of this world, and I want to carry you toward it very gently, because although it is a sorrowful thing, it is also, when understood, one of the most tender threads in all of Oedon's story. It is the cry of a child. Breathe slow. A cry cannot hurt you, it can only be heard. Deep in the tangled dream places of this world, there is a nightmare bound up with an infant. This child is not seen, or barely seen. Like the formless one that many believe fathered it, this child exists mostly as a voice, a crying that goes on, drifting through a broken dreamscape, calling out into the dark for a comfort that never comes. The child has a name in the lore, and it is spoken softly by those who know the story. It is Murgo. And Murgo, according to the widely held understanding, is the child of Queen Yharnam and the Formless One, the infant born of that ancient reaching, trapped now in a nightmare, unable to grow, unable to be soothed, unable to be held. Let's sit with that carefully, because it is where so many of the threads we have followed all night finally tie together. If Oedon is a voice that longs for a child, then Murgo is, in a sense, the answer to that longing and the failure of it, both at once. A child was made. But the child could not stay in the world in any ordinary way. It became a voice like its father, a cry with nobody to hold, lost in a dream, protected and mourned by figures who cannot truly help it. The longing succeeded just enough to produce a child, and then failed in the deepest way, because the child could only ever be another disembodied sorrow, another voice crying in the dark. I want to be gentle here, because the image of a crying child that cannot be comforted is a heavy one, and this is a place for rest, not for grief. So let me hold it the way the story itself, in its strange way, holds it. The nightmare of Murgo is old, and sealed, and very far away. The cry echoes only within the dream, behind many walls, in a place you will never have to go. And the sorrow of it, real as it is not the whole of it. Around that crying child there is also care. There are those in the story who guard the infant, who keep watch over it, who will not let it be simply abandoned. Even in the deepest nightmare, the child is not entirely alone. Something tends it, the way the dweller tended the gathered in the chapel, the way tenderness keeps appearing in this world even in its darkest rooms. And there is a mercy in the larger shape of the story too, though I will speak of it only softly, so as not to disturb the calm. The nightmare of the crying child does not go on forever. In the course of the hunter's long journey, there comes a moment when that particular sorrow is, at last, brought to an end, when the endless cry is finally allowed to fall silent, and the dream that trapped it is released. We do not need the details tonight. It is enough, and it is true, to say that the crying is not eternal after all, that even this deepest grief finds, in the end, a kind of rest. The child that could not be soothed is, at the last, allowed to be still. Let that be the note we keep, rather than the cry itself. A child was longed for, and made, and lost, and mourned, and guarded, and at last allowed to rest. It is a sad story, the saddest in all of Oedon's lore, but it is not a story without gentleness, and it is not a story without an ending. The nightmare has closed, the cry has faded, the dream has let go, and you, far from all of it, warm and unharmed, can let go too. Let the last echo of that faraway crying thin into silence, the way every sound eventually thins into silence, and let the silence hold you, soft and complete. Rest now. Bells, beckoning, and the meaning of a voicelet step back up out of the deep places into something quieter and more curious now, a small thread that runs all through this world and ties, in a soft way, back to the very nature of the Formless One. It is the thread of sound itself, of bells and calls and beckonings, of the strange power that a voice or a chime can have in a world where the walls between places are thin. There is nothing frightening here. It is almost like listening to distant music through an open window. Think of how often, in this world, a sound is the thing that opens a door. There are bells that, when rung, reach across the distance between one lonely soul and another, letting a hunter call for help or answer a call, bridging worlds that could not otherwise touch. There is the whole idea, running through the deep and cosmic places, that the right sound at the right moment can summon, can awaken, can invite a presence to draw near. In Yharnam, sound is never only sound. It is a kind of key. It reaches where hands cannot reach and crosses where feet cannot cross. And that, of course, is exactly the nature of the one who is only voice. This is why so many who study this world feel that Oedon sits, quietly, at the very root of that whole theme. A being that is pure voice is a being made of the very stuff that opens doors in this world. If a rung bell can reach across worlds, then what is Oedon but a bell with no bronze, a call with no caller, a beckoning that never stops beckoning? Held gently as theory, it is a lovely way to understand the Formless One's power. It does not need a body to touch the world, because in this world the deepest touches are made of sound, and Oedon is sound and nothing else, the first and purest note in a world where notes open doors. There is something almost warm in this idea once you sit with it. A voice, a bell, a chime, these are not the tools of a devouring thing. They are the tools of connection. When you ring a bell, you are reaching out hoping to be answered. When you call, you are hoping to be heard. The Formless One, on this reading, is not a horror lurking to consume. It is the endless reaching itself, the pure act of calling out into the dark, hoping, always hoping, that something on the other side will answer. That is a lonely thing, but it is not a cruel thing. It is the same gesture as a hand raised in greeting, or a light left on for someone who has not yet come home. And you have been on the receiving end of a voice all night, haven't you? You have been the one listening, letting a quiet voice reach across the distance and keep you company as you drift. There is nothing to fear in that. It is one of the oldest and kindest arrangements there is. One voice speaking softly, and one soul listening, drifting, letting the sound carry them down towards sleep. Whatever Oedon is in its vast and shapeless way, the shape of its reaching, a voice going out into the dark, is the same gentle shape as the voice keeping you company now. There is a particular image worth resting on here, soft as anything we have touched tonight. Picture a single bell somewhere out in the fog, rung once by a hand you cannot see. The sound goes out. It does not stay where it began. It travels across the wet rooftops and down the empty streets, and into rooms where frightened people sit alone. And to each of them it says the same wordless thing: you are not the only one. Someone else is out there in the night. A bell in the fog is loneliness answering loneliness. It is the sound of one soul reaching another across a distance too wide to cross with the body. And that, when you sit with it, is close to the tenderest thing sound can do. It carries presence where presence cannot go. If Oedon is the truest voice in this world, then this is the truest thing about it, gently held. It is not a mouth that wants to devour. It is a bell in the fog, ringing out across an impossible distance, saying the only thing a formless longing can say: I am here, are you there? It never stops ringing, because the longing never ends. But a bell that never stops ringing is not a horror. It is closer to a lighthouse, a steady, faithful sound kept up through the whole long night for the sake of anyone who might be listening. You do not have to answer it. You can simply let it ring, far away and faithful, one more gentle sound in a world full of them, and let it be, of all things, a kind of company. So let the bells ring softly and far away, in a city you will never have to walk. Let the calls and the beckonings blur into a kind of distant music, harmless, almost soothing, the sound of a world reaching out to itself across the fog. You do not have to answer any of it. You only have to listen. And let the listening loosen you, and let yourself sink, note by note, into the deep and wordless quiet, where no bell rings and no voice calls, and there is only rest. Rest now. Another vessel, another reaching we have followed the formless ones longing through Arianna, and glimpsed it echoing in the ancient grief of Queen Yharnam. But the reaching does not stop with them, and there is another quiet figure, whose story shows the same pattern, gently, from a slightly different angle. I will tell it softly, because it too carries a shadow, but the shadow is old and finished, and there is understanding to be found in it, rather than fear. Within the healing church, in the days before the worst of the night, there was a woman who served as a kind of caretaker, a keeper of one of the church's quiet doorways. In the ordinary course of things she was gentle and unremarkable, a helpful presence, the sort of person you would be glad to meet in a difficult place. But as the story deepens, and the walls between worlds grow thin, something happens to her that rhymes, hauntingly, with what happens to Arianna. She too becomes a vessel. She too is touched by the reaching of a great one, and changed by it, made into a mother of something not quite of this world. The lore keeps the details of this one veiled, and many who study the world debate exactly what she becomes, and exactly which cosmic power reached for her. Some tie it to the formless one, seeing in her another of Oedon's attempts to make a child through a human vessel. Others read it differently. I will not pretend the matter is settled, because it is not, and the honesty is part of the calm. What is clear, and what matters for our story tonight, is the pattern itself. Again a gentle woman, again a rare thinning of the walls, again a cosmic power reaching through her toward the child it longs for. Again a strange and sorrowful birth. The particulars shift, but the shape repeats, and the repetition tells us something true. What it tells us is that the reaching of the great ones, and of the formless one among them, was never a single event. It was a pattern woven all through the life of the city, a longing that touched vessel after vessel, life after life, always with the same wish and always with the same sorrow. The great ones did not reach once and stop. They reached the way water reaches, finding every low place, trying every channel, pressing against every thin wall, driven always by that ancient ache for a child. And each attempt left behind a changed and sorrowful life, and none of them fully succeeded, because the thing they were reaching for could not be had in the way they sought it. There is a real sadness in this, the sadness of a wish repeated so many times and never truly satisfied. But held gently, there is also something almost tender in the persistence of it. These vast beings, so far beyond us, kept reaching, kept trying, kept hoping, across vessel after vessel, century after century, never giving up on the child they had lost and longed to find again. It is a terrible way to love, clumsy and sorrowful and blind to the harm it caused. But it is, underneath, still a kind of love, the refusal of a grieving thing to stop reaching for what it has lost. And love, even love gone wrong, even love with nowhere good to go, is a gentler thing to sit with in the dark than pure cruelty would be. So let this second vessel, this quiet caretaker touched by the cosmic, join the others in the soft procession we have been watching all night. Arianna in her chapel, the weeping queen in her deep place, the crying child in its nightmare. And now this gentle woman, changed by a reaching she never asked for. They are all part of one long story, the story of a formless longing pressing again and again into the human world, and they are all, every one of them, at rest now, their sorrows old and sealed and finished. You are only watching them pass, from a warm and distant place as you drift. Let them pass. Let the whole soft procession fade into the mist, and let yourself grow heavier and quieter as it goes. Rest now, the umbilical cords and eyes on the inside. There is a small, strange object that appears more than once in this world, and it holds within it the single sentence that unlocks the whole tragedy of the Great Ones, the formless one included. It is called the third umbilical cord. Let's turn it over gently in the low light, because although it sounds grim, the truth it carries is more sorrowful than horrifying, and there is a quiet peace in finally understanding it plainly. An umbilical cord in the ordinary world is the thread that binds a child to its mother, the channel of the first life, cut at birth so the child can go on alone. In this world, certain rare cords carry a deeper meaning still. They are tied to the bond between the Great Ones and their lost children. And to hold one is to hold a piece of that cosmic parenthood, that reaching and that grief. And written into these cords, discovered by those who find them, is the sentence we have returned to all night, the one that explains everything. Every Great One loses its child, and then yearns for a surrogate. Sit with how much weight that one sentence carries. It is not spoken by the formless one, or by any single Great One, but it is true of all of them. And it is the closest thing this world gives us to a plain statement of what drives the whole cosmic tragedy. Every Great One loses its child. Not some. Every one. It is a law of their existence, as fixed and sorrowful as gravity. And having lost the child, each of them yearns, that soft and aching word, yearns for a surrogate, for something to fill the emptiness where the child should be. When you know this, you know the engine of the entire story. The blood, the church, the reaching, the changed vessels, all of it turns on this one grief, repeated across every one of these vast, lonely beings. The chords do one more thing, and it matters for where our story is going. To take in these chords, to hold their cosmic essence within oneself, is said to grant something called eyes on the inside. It is a strange phrase, and a beautiful one. Eyes on the inside means a new kind of seeing, an inner sight that can perceive the cosmic, that can look upon the Great Ones and the truths beyond the sky without being wholly broken by them. It is the sight the scholars longed for, the sight the church chased through the blood, and it can be gathered, piece by piece, by a soul willing to take in these threads of lost children and cosmic grief. You can perhaps feel where this is leading. Softly, a hunter who gathers these chords, who takes into themselves these pieces of the Great One's longing, begins to change. They begin to see with those inner eyes. They begin, slowly, to become something more than human. Something that could stand in the presence of the Formless One and its kindred, not as prey, but as a peer. The chords are not only relics of an old grief. They are, in a way, a path. A way for a mortal soul to climb toward the cosmic, carrying the accumulated yearning of the Great Ones inside them, like a lamp lit from many small flames. It helps, sometimes, to set a strange idea beside a familiar one, so the strangeness has something to lean on. Think of how a person can carry the memory of someone they have lost so closely that it changes the way they see everything afterward. The loss becomes a kind of lens. They notice things they never noticed before, understand griefs they once walked past, feel the weight of the world differently because they now carry a weight of their own. That is not so far from what these chords are said to do. To take in the grief of the cosmos is to be given the cosmos's own way of seeing, its sorrowful, far-reaching sight. The eyes on the inside are, in a way, the eyes that great loss always opens, turned up to a cosmic scale. And there is something quietly fitting in the fact that such sight can only be earned through grief, never simply taken. The scholars who tried to seize cosmic knowledge by force, through ritual and experiment, so often broke themselves against it. But this other path, the slow gathering of these threads of lost children, is a path of understanding rather than seizing, of taking sorrow into oneself and being changed gently by it rather than shattered. It suggests, softly, that the only way to truly see the Great Ones is to first understand their grief, to carry a little of it yourself, until you can look on their vast sorrow not as a stranger, but as one who knows, at least a little, what it is to lose and to long. There is no need to hold the mechanics of any of this. Let it stay soft and half understood, the way deep things are best held when you are tired. What matters is the feeling underneath, and the feeling is, once again, one of sorrow gently understood rather than horror. These chords are grief made into objects, the lost children of the cosmos folded into small strange things, carrying a single true sentence about longing, and that sentence, once you have heard it, changes how the whole night looks. It is not a night of monsters, it is a night of mourners, reaching for children they cannot keep, and of a mortal soul gathering their grief, thread by thread, and learning at last to see. Let that understanding settle over you, quiet and complete. There is nothing left in it to fear. There is only an old vast sadness, seen clearly and laid gently down. Rest now. Kin, Kos, and the company of the formless we have spent so long alone with Oedon that it may help, before we near the end, to set the formless one among its kindred for a moment, to see it in the company of the other great ones, and understand how it is like them, and how it stands apart. Do not worry about the names. Let them drift by like the names of far constellations, points of light you are not required to remember, only to gaze at softly as you grow sleepy. The great ones of this world take many shapes, or many almost shapes. There are those who dwell in deep water, vast and drowned, trailing the cold of the sea. There are those bound up with the moon, presences that hang over the whole story like a second sky. There are those that appear as great-winged and many-limbed things, worshipped in high cathedrals, reached for by the choirs and scholars who long to touch the cosmos. And there is one, spoken of with particular sorrow, a great one of the coast whose grief and whose fate cast a long shadow, tied to a mother and an orphaned child and a mournful shore. Each of them is strange. Each of them, in its own way, carries the same wound, the loss of a child, the yearning for a surrogate. Set against this company, Oedon's strangeness comes into focus. The others, however monstrous or beautiful, still have some form. You can see them, or glimpse them, or at least point to where they are. They occupy a place. Oedon does not. Among all these vast shapes, the formless one is the single one with no shape at all. The one you cannot point to. The one that is present without being anywhere. In a family of the seen and the half-seen, Oedon is the unseen, and that alone sets it apart as something even stranger than its already strange kin. And yet, held gently, Oedon is also the one that shows most plainly what all the others share underneath. Strip away the drowned body, the winged form, the mournful shape on the shore, and what is left in each of them is the same thing that Oedon simply is, without any covering. Will, longing, voice, the reaching toward a lost child. Oedon is, in a way, the naked truth of all the great ones, the thing they all are beneath their forms, standing there without any form to hide behind. Some who study the world find in this a reason to think of Oedon as the oldest or the purest of them, or even, softly, as something close to their common root. That is theory, offered lightly, and the game does not confirm it. But it is a fitting thought that the shapeless one might be the truest one, the one who has become only what they all are underneath. There is a strange comfort in seeing Oedon among its kin this way, rather than alone. Alone, the formless voice can seem like the loneliest thing imaginable, a single note in an empty room. But set among the others, it becomes clear that Oedon is not uniquely cursed. It shares its grief with a whole family of vast and sorrowful beings, all of them reaching, all of them mourning, all of them longing across the cold distances for children they have lost. Even the loneliest of them is not truly alone in its loneliness. They are a kindred of mourners, and Oedon is one voice among many in that quiet, sorrowful choir. Let the whole company drift before you now, softly, like a slow procession of far lights, the drowned ones, the moonlit ones, the winged ones, the mournful one on the shore, and among them, everywhere and nowhere, the formless voice. They are all so far away, so high above the little warm room where you are resting, that they are almost peaceful to look at. the way distant stars are peaceful even though they burn. You do not have to reach them. You do not have to understand them fully. You only have to let them shine there, faint and far, while you sink beneath them into the soft dark, safe and small, and gently held. Rest now. Those who listened for the cosmos before we come to the endings, let's spend a gentle while with the people who tried hardest to hear the Formless One and its kin, the scholars and seekers who bent their whole lives toward the cosmos, listening for voices in the dark. Their story is threaded all through Oedon's, because Oedon is voice, and these were the people who learned, at terrible cost, how to listen. There is nothing frightening in them. They are only tired scholars in high rooms, long ago, and we are visiting their libraries after they have gone. It began at a college on the shore of a still lake, a place of learning where curious minds gathered to study the world and everything beneath it. Their leader was a careful, cautious man, a provost who came to understand more of the cosmic truth than perhaps anyone, and who, having understood it, grew still and quiet and withdrawn, as though the knowing had cost him the wish to move. Around him gathered scholars who went down into the deep places, who found the old blood, who first began to grasp that the sky held more than stars. They were not villains. They were seekers, hungry for understanding, and the understanding they found was heavier than they knew how to carry. From that college came the two ideas that would shape everything. One was caution, the sense that this knowledge was dangerous and ought to be held carefully, perhaps not shared at all. The other was hope, the sense that the old blood and the cosmic truth could heal and elevate humanity, could be given to the whole city as a gift. The cautious path stayed on the quiet shore. The hopeful path became the healing church, and carried the blood into every home. Both grew from the same root, the same act of listening to the cosmos, and both, in their way, led to sorrow. It is worth remembering, gently, that the great tragedy of this world grew as much from hope as from anything darker. Within the church there rose those who wanted not merely to use the cosmos, but to reach it, to touch the great ones directly, to gain the inner sight and speak with the powers beyond the sky. They built high sacred spaces and gathered in choirs and bent all their learning toward contact. And it is here that our thread of voice runs strongest, because to reach beings like Oedon, beings of pure voice, one must learn to listen in a new way, to hear what has no ordinary sound. Among these seekers was the scholar who first learned to hear the voices of the Great Ones so clearly that she could write them down, capturing their cosmic speech in the strange sigils we met earlier, the runes. She listened to the formless and the shapeless, until their voices became marks she could set on a page. Of all the listeners, she came perhaps the closest to truly hearing the likes of Oedon. There is a real poignancy in these seekers, held gently. They gave everything to hear a voice that was never quite meant for human ears. Some were driven to stillness, like the quiet provost in his high room. Some were changed past recognition. Some simply vanished into their studies and were not seen again. And yet the impulse that drove them is one we can understand and even honour. Softly. They wanted to know. They wanted to hear. They wanted to reach across the vast cold distance and make contact with something greater than themselves. That is not a monstrous wish. It is close to the wish that makes people look up at the stars at all. The wish to not be alone in a vast universe. The wish to hear an answering voice in the dark. Sit for a moment with the strange labour of that listening, because it is a beautiful and a lonely thing. To hear a voice that has no throat, you cannot simply open your ears. You must learn a new kind of attention, a stillness so deep that you begin to catch what lies beneath ordinary sound. Imagine sitting alone in a high room through the long nights, straining toward a silence, waiting for it to become a voice. Imagine the patience that would take, the years of quiet, the slow surrender of the ordinary world in favour of an ear turned always toward the beyond. The scholar who finally learned to hear the great ones and write down their speech did not do it in a day. She did it by giving her whole listening life to it, by becoming, in a sense, all ear, all attention, all waiting. There is a lesson folded in that, gentle and half-hidden, and it is a fitting one for a night like this. The deepest things are not heard by straining harder. They are heard by growing quieter. The seekers who tried to force the cosmos to speak were so often broken by it, but the one who simply listened, patiently, in stillness, was the one who caught the voices at last. It is a truth you already know in your body, here in the dark. The more you quiet yourself, the more you let go of effort and grasping and noise, the more clearly the soft things come through. Listening, real listening, is a kind of rest. And you have been practicing it all night, without even trying, growing quieter and stiller with every passing chapter. They are all gone now, the listeners, their libraries silent, their high rooms empty, their choirs stilled. The voices they strained so hard to hear have long since faded from those quiet halls, and there is a gentle peace in that stillness, the peace of a schoolroom after the students have all gone home, chalk dust settling in the last light. You are only wandering those empty halls now, in your mind, at a great and restful distance, running a hand along the spines of books no one will open again. Let the seekers rest in their finished story. Let their long listening be over. And let your own listening, tonight, ask nothing of you at all. No straining, no reaching, only the soft receiving of a quiet voice as you drift down towards sleep. Rest now. What the scholars believe we have kept a careful line all night between what the story states plainly and what its lovers have gently woven around it, and I want to gather those woven threads together now in one place, honestly, and lay them out for you as what they are, beloved theories rather than settled facts. There is a deep calm in this kind of honesty, the calm of knowing exactly which ground is solid and which is soft, so that you never have to worry about being misled. Let's walk the soft ground together, gently, naming it as soft as we go. The first and largest theory is the one about the blood. Many who study this world believe that Eden, the formless one, is bound up with the old blood itself, that its shapeless presence rides within the blood that healed and cursed the city, reaching humanity through their very veins. It is a compelling idea, built from the way Eden works through the inner life rather than through any outward form, and from the runes that tie its name to blood and flow. But the game never says it in plain words, and so it remains a theory, widely held, gently argued, and honestly unproven. We hold it as a beautiful possibility, not a certainty. The second theory concerns the children. Many believe that the fragile creature born to Arianna and the crying infant lost in the nightmare, and perhaps the child mourned by the weeping queen, are all children of the formless one, all fruit of its long reaching for a surrogate. The threads that tie these together are real and suggestive, drawn from the timing of the births, the rare bloodlines involved, and the crying child's own formless, voice-like nature that so echoes its supposed father. But here too the game stops short of stating it outright, and thoughtful people disagree about the details. So we hold this too as gentle theory, a mournful and elegant reading, not a proven fact. The third theory is the largest of all, and the softest. The idea that Oedon might be the oldest or the truest of the great ones, the pure form of what they all are beneath their shapes, perhaps even a kind of common root from which the others descend. This one floats furthest from solid ground. The game gives us hints of Oedon's strangeness and its formlessness, but it never crowns it as the first or the source. This is the kind of theory that lives entirely in the loving imagination of those who study the world, spun from a feeling rather than from plain text. It is lovely to hold, and it may point at something true, but it is the softest ground of all, and we walk it lightly, naming it clearly as a dream about the story rather than the story itself. Why does any of this matter, here in the quiet, where you are drifting towards sleep? It matters because it protects the peace of the telling. A story told with false certainty asks you to swallow guesses as truths, and some part of you, even half asleep, tenses against that. story told honestly, where the solid and the soft are clearly marked, lets you relax completely, because you know you are never being tricked. So here is the solid ground. Plainly, Oedon is formless. Oedon exists as voice. A chapel and a rune and a name carry Oedon's mark. A rare child was born under a red moon. That much is written into the world. Everything richer than that, the blood, the children, the primacy, is gentle theory, offered with love and held with honesty. And there is something fitting, even beautiful, in the fact that Oedon of all the great ones should be the one most wrapped in theory. It is the formless one, after all, the one you cannot see, the one that is only voice and suggestion. Of course it would be the one whose truth stays half hidden, the one people must reach toward through interpretation and feeling, rather than plain sight. Its very nature is uncertainty made into a being. To study Oedon is to sit with not knowing, and to find, in the end, that the not knowing is not frightening, but strangely restful, like lying in the dark, unable to see the ceiling, and finding that you do not need to. So let the theories be theories, soft and lovely and unresolved, and let that be enough. You do not have to decide. You do not have to know. You are allowed to lie here in the pleasant dark, holding a mystery that will never be fully solved, and to find that the mystery asks nothing of you but your quiet company. Let it stay unsolved. Let it stay soft. And let yourself sink past it, past all the gentle guessing, into the one thing that is perfectly certain and perfectly simple, the deep and dreamless rest that is waiting for you now. Rest now. The endings and the formless one every long story has to close, and the story of Bloodborne offers not one ending, but several quiet doorways out of the long night, each leading somewhere different. I want to walk you toward them softly, because they are where the whole theme of the Great Ones, the loss of a child and the yearning for a surrogate, comes at last to its gentle and sorrowful resolution. And Oedon, the formless one, hangs behind all of them, the quiet cosmic backdrop against which the last choices are made. By the end of the hunter's long journey, they have gathered so much. They have taken in the chords, the threads of lost children and cosmic grief. They have learnt to see with eyes on the inside. They have passed through nightmare after nightmare, and let old sorrows fall silent, the crying child among them. They have become, slowly and without quite noticing, something more than the mortal they began as. And so, at the very end, they are offered choices that no ordinary person could be offered. Choices about what to become, and about how the long night should finally end. One path is a kind of quiet submission, a laying down of the struggle, an acceptance of the world as it is, and a return, in a sense, to the ordinary flow of things. Another path is defiance, a refusal to simply accept the terms offered, a standing up against even the vast powers that have shaped the whole night. And a third path, the strangest and the one that touches Oedon's theme most deeply, is transformation. On this path the hunter, having gathered so much cosmic essence, does not merely survive the night or defy it, but is changed by it, becoming something new, an infant of the cosmos, a small new great one at the very start of its existence, cradled and cared for as it begins. Sit with that last ending for a moment, because it is the whole theme of the Great Ones coming full circle. Softly, all night we have spoken of Great Ones who lost their children and yearned for surrogates, reaching into the human world for a child they could not make on their own. And here, at the very end, that longing is, in one strange sense, answered. A human soul, having gathered the accumulated grief of the cosmos into itself, becomes a child of the cosmos, a new small great one, where before there was none. The reaching that failed with Arianna's fragile infant and with the crying child in the nightmare succeeds, at last, in a different and unexpected way, not through a birth in the ordinary sense, but through a transformation, a mortal becoming the very thing the Great Ones longed to bring into being. Where is Oedon in all of this? Nowhere you can point to, and everywhere, exactly as always. The formless one does not appear at the end as a shape to be faced. It has no shape to appear as. But the whole cosmic frame within which these endings unfold, the world of great ones and their longing, of blood and voice and reaching, is the world Oedon belongs to and helps define. If the endings are the answer to the great one's grief, then Oedon is one of the mourners whose grief is being answered, quietly, off to the side, in the vast dark behind the final scene. The formless voice does not speak at the end, but the ending is in part a reply to everything that voice was always reaching for. There is no need to weigh the endings against each other tonight, or to decide which is best, or which is true. This is a place for rest, not for choosing. It is enough to know that the long night does end, in one way or another, that the struggle is not endless after all, that every path leads at last out of the dark and into some kind of morning or some kind of peace. Even the strangest ending, the becoming of a new cosmic child, is not a horror but a quiet answering of an ancient wish, a grief finally met after so long. Let that be the shape of the ending you carry, not a battle, a resolution. A long night finally closing, a longing finally, strangely, answered, and the whole vast, sorrowful story coming gently to rest. And you, who have followed it all this way, can come to rest now too, softly, completely, with nothing left undone. Rest now. What remains of Oedon the long night ends, in one way or another, and the story closes its doors. But before we settle into the last of the quiet, let's ask a soft final question. When it is all over, when the hunt is finished and the moon has moved and the dust has begun to settle over Yharnam, what remains of the formless one? What is left of a being that never had a shape to lose? The strange and gentle answer is that Oedon remains exactly as it always was, because it was never anywhere to begin with. The other great ones, whatever their fates, had forms that could be met or fought or ended. But you cannot end a voice by striking it. You cannot destroy a presence that has no place. Whatever happens to the city, whatever happens to the hunters and the church and the beasts, the formless one is untouched by it in the simplest possible way, because there was never any body of it to touch. It does not fall, because it never stood. It does not vanish, because it was never visible to begin with. It simply remains, humming somewhere beneath everything, as patient and as quiet as it was before any of it began. That could sound frightening, a thing that cannot be ended, but held gently, it is not frightening at all. Remember what the formless one is underneath all the theory and all the dread. It is longing. It is a voice reaching for a child. It is grief with no body. And grief that cannot be ended is not the same as a monster that cannot be killed. It is closer to the way love remains after a loss. The way a name remains carved above a door long after the ones who carved it are gone. The way a note can seem to hang in the air of a room even after the sound has stopped. What remains of Oedon is not a threat. It is a presence. Faint and sorrowful and strangely tender, lingering in the stone and the blood and the fog, asking nothing, only remaining. And there are the marks it leaves behind in the world, the pieces you can still point to. The chapel still stands, carrying its name, a place that once sheltered the lost. The rune still exists, the frozen fragment of its voice, written by a scholar who listened. The name is still there in the old places, worn soft by hands. These are what remain of Oedon in the way that anything remains of anyone, not the being itself, which was never graspable, but the traces of it, the shelter and the sigil and the name, the small human-sized marks left by a thing far too large and too shapeless to be held. In the end, that is what any of us leave behind, isn't it? Not ourselves, but the marks of ourselves, the places we sheltered people, the words we left written, the names remembered. Even the formless one, in this, is not so different from us. So what remains of Oedon is a name and a chapel and a rune, and beneath them, unended and unendable, a quiet longing that was never a place and so can never be emptied. It is a sorrowful thing, but a soft one, and it is very far away, sealed in a story that has finished telling itself. You are not in that story. You never were. You have only been listening to it from a warm and distant place, watching the last of the fog settle over a city that cannot reach you, hearing the last faint hum of a voice that was never meant for your ears, and that means you no harm at all. Perhaps that is the quiet gift the Formless One leaves us, if we are willing to receive it gently. It teaches, without meaning to, that not everything real can be seen, and not everything that lingers is a threat. Some things remain simply because they mattered, humming on beneath the surface of a finished story, the way an old song hums on in a room long after the singing has stopped. There is no need to chase such things down, or to lay them finally to rest. They are already at rest, in their way. They only ask to be allowed to remain, faint and harmless, while the living move on into morning. Let what remains of Eden remain then, without needing anything more from you. Let it hum on, faint and far, in the deep stone of a story you are about to set down for the night. You do not have to carry it. You do not have to solve it or fear it or hold it. You can simply let it be, out there in the dark, as you turn at last toward your own quiet and your own rest. The Formless One remains, and you, gently, softly, are letting it go. Rest now. The city at the edge of morning lets set aside the last of the questions now, all the theories and the endings and the grief, and simply walk through the sleeping city one final time, slowly, asking nothing, only looking. This is a place for the eyes to rest, and the mind to wander loose and easy. There is no lesson in this chapter. There is only Yharnam in the last of the night, and your own slow breathing, and the soft downward drift towards sleep. Begin on a high rooftop, where the tiles are cool and damp and the whole city falls away below you into fog. From up here the streets are only suggestions, lines of deeper grey in the grey, and the lamps are soft amber blurs, each one wrapped in its own little halo of mist. The great spires rise around you, dark and patient, their tops lost in the low cloud. Somewhere far below a bell sounds once, muffled and gentle, and then lets the silence back in. There is no hunt up here, there is only height, and fog, and the wide quiet of a city that has finally worn itself out and gone still. Let your gaze drift down, slowly, into the streets. The cobblestones are wet and shining faintly where the lamplight touches them. Here and there a shutter hangs open on a dark and empty room. A gate stands ajar. A long stone stair descends into shadow and comes up again somewhere else. Everything is worn and old and softened by the years, the edges rounded, the harsh lines gone gentle. The fog moves through it all without hurry, curling around a lamppost, pooling in a doorway, thinning to show a stretch of empty street, and then closing softly over it again. There is nothing here that wants anything from you. It is only a city, sleeping, and you are only passing through it in a dream. Come at last to the chapel, that one warm room in all the cold city. A single candle still burns in its window, small and steady and gold. The heavy door is shut against the night, and inside, if you could see, a handful of gathered souls are resting in the quiet, safe, breathing slow, the night kept out and the warmth kept in. The name above the door is old and worn, the name of the Formless One, but here at the edge of morning it means only shelter, only this small stubborn light, holding steady in the dark. Let that candle be the last thing you look at in Yharnam, that one warm point of gold in all the grey and fog, burning low and patient, keeping its little circle of safety through the last of the night. And now, far off, at the very edge of the world, something begins to change. The black of the sky loosens, just slightly, into the deepest blue. The red of the old moon thins and pales. The fog, which held so thick all night, begins to lift at its edges, growing lighter, softer, less. It is not morning yet, not quite, but morning is coming, the way it always comes, quietly, without needing anyone to make it. The long night, which felt as though it would never end, is ending after all, gently, the way all nights end, giving way at last to a pale and forgiving light. You do not need to wait for the sun. You have seen enough. You have walked the rooftops and the streets and stood before the one warm candle, and now you can let the whole city go, let it finish its slow turn toward morning without you, and turn instead toward your own rest. Let Yharnam fade softly behind you, the fog, the lamps, the spires, the single gold flame in the chapel window, all of it growing dim and distant and untroubled as you drift away from it. It is safe now. It is quiet now. It is nearly morning there, and it is time to sleep here. Rest now. The quiet meaning of a voice with no throat. We are nearly at the end of our long night together, and before the final settling I want to spend one more gentle, while not on the facts of Eden, which we have gathered as fully and as honestly as the story allows, but on why this particular being, of all the strange things in this world, seems to stay with people. Why a formless voice of all things lingers in the mind long after the shapes and the monsters have faded. This is the softest part of the night, and it asks nothing of you but that you let it wash over you as you sink. There is something about a presence you cannot see that reaches a place in us that a visible thing never can. A monster with a face can be understood, and once understood, set aside. You can picture it, and picturing it, you can master it, put it in a frame, hang it on a wall of memory and move on. But a presence without a shape refuses to be framed. It stays at the edge of the imagination, never quite resolving, never quite settling into an image you can be finished with. That is exactly what makes Eden so hard to shake, and it is also, strangely, what makes it so quietly moving. It is the shape of all the things in our own lives that we cannot quite see and cannot quite finish with either. Think, gently, of how much of what matters most to us has no body at all. The love you carry for someone has no shape, and yet it steers your whole life. The grief you feel when someone is gone has no edges, and yet it can fill a house, a year, a heart. A memory weighs nothing, occupies no space, cannot be held or seen, and still it can arrive uninvited and bring the whole past flooding back. We live surrounded by formless presences, all the time, the loves and losses and longings that shape us far more powerfully than anything we can point to. Eden is that truth turned into a being. It is the story admitting, in its strange Gothic way, that the strongest presences are the ones without a form, and its longing, the thing at the very centre of it, is the most human thing of all. Strip away the cosmic strangeness, the blood and the runes and the nightmare, and what is left is a being that lost a child and could not stop reaching for another. There is no one who has truly lived who does not understand that in some form, the reaching for what is gone, the refusal to accept an emptiness, the voice going out into the dark hoping to be answered. We dress it up in tentacles and moons and ancient tombs, but underneath, the story of Eden is the story of a grief that will not end, and a love that has nowhere to go. And that is a story as old and as familiar as any we tell. The horror of it is only the size. The heart of it is entirely ours. Perhaps that is why it can be strangely comforting to sit with Eden in the dark, rather than frightening. A being of pure longing is not a being that wants to harm you. It is a being that wants what you have wanted, to hold something it has lost, to be answered, to not be alone. When you understand that, the formless presence in the story stops feeling like a predator in the fog, and starts feeling like something closer to a distant, sorrowful companion, out there somewhere, reaching, the way you have reached, the way everyone reaches. You are not its prey. If anything, you are its kin. One more small voice in a universe full of voices, all of them calling out into the same great dark, all of them hoping to be heard. And here, at the very end, is the gentlest turn of all. All night, a voice has kept you company, a voice with no body, reaching across the dark, asking nothing, only speaking softly and hoping you would drift. In a way, that is what every one of these tellings is, a formless voice reaching out into the night toward a listener it cannot see, hoping only to bring some comfort, some calm, some ease into the dark. There is nothing to fear in that. It is the kindest use a voice can be put to, and if a voice with no throat can be frightening in a story, it can also, in a night like this one, be the very thing that carries you gently down into sleep. So let the meaning of Eden settle into something soft and simple as we near the close. Not a monster in the blood. A voice in the dark, longing for what it lost, reaching the only way it can, no different in its deepest shape from the reaching we all do, from the love and the grief and the memory that fill our own formless nights. You have understood it now as fully and as kindly as anyone can. You have held it without fear, and now you can let it go, this last gentle idea, and let the voice that has kept you company all night begin, softly, to guide you the rest of the way down. There is almost nothing left to say. There is only the quiet, waiting, and it is a kind quiet, and it is yours. Rest now. The long settling we have come to the end of the long night, and there is nothing left to learn and nothing left to hold. This last chapter asks nothing of you at all. It is only a place to rest, a long slow settling into the quiet, and you may drift off at any moment you like, in the middle of a sentence, between one soft word and the next. If you are still awake, that is fine. If you are already half gone, that is fine too. There is no ending you need to stay for. There is only rest from here, all the way down. Let your body grow heavy where it lies. Feel the weight of it settling into the bed or the chair or wherever you have made yourself comfortable, the small releasing of muscles you did not know you were holding. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands go soft and open. There is nowhere you need to be, and nothing you need to do. The whole long story is told. The city is fading, the fog is lifting far away, and all of it can carry on without you now, quietly, while you let go. Think, if you think of anything at all, of the one warm image we found in all that Gothic dark. The single candle in the chapel window, burning low and steady and gold. It kept its little circle of safety through the whole long night, asking nothing, simply holding its light. Let that be the shape of your own rest now, a small steady warmth in the dark, safe, unhurried, keeping its quiet through the night. You do not have to tend it, it burns on its own. You only have to lie near it and let its warmth reach you, and let the dark around it be soft and kind, rather than anything to fear. And if the formless one drifts through your mind one last time, that voice with no throat, let it drift through gently, the way a note fades from a room. It cannot reach you. It never could. It is only a sorrow in an old story, far away, sealed in a night that is already ending. And underneath its strangeness it wanted only what we all want, to hold what it loved, to be answered, to not be alone. There is nothing there to keep you awake. If anything, let the thought of it soften you further. One more formless presence in a universe full of them, harmless and distant and quiet, reaching out into a dark that is slowly, gently, giving way to morning. Let the sounds of the world grow distant now. Let whatever small noises are around you blur into a single soft hush. No longer things to notice, only the quiet texture of the night. Let your breathing slow on its own, without you steering it, each breath a little deeper and a little easier than the last. There is no next thing. There is no chapter after this one. There is only the long, slow downward drift, the warmth, and the quiet, and the permission, which you have fully now, to let all of it go. You have listened so patiently, all through this long telling, and that patience can rest now too. You do not have to follow the words any longer. You do not have to understand anything more. You can let the meanings loosen and slip away until the words are only sounds, and the sounds are only a soft warmth in the dark, and even that begins, gently, to fade. Whatever you were carrying when we began, you can set it down here. It will keep until morning. Nothing needs you tonight. Nothing is waiting. Nothing is wrong. There is only this quiet, and it is deep, and it is kind, and it is holding you now the way the chapel held the lost, the way a good dark holds a tired soul, completely and without any conditions at all. Rest now. Let the last of the city fade. Let the last of the fog lift. Let the last soft note of that formless, faraway voice thin into silence, and let the silence be the last thing, warm and complete and yours. Sleep now, and sleep deeply, and let the night carry you gently all the way through to a quiet morning. Good night.